Another amazing story. The next speaker that we have, he's a dear friend. His name is Anthony Perez, and he is Vice President and Commercial Banking Relationship Manager at Bank of Tampa. And he also serves, and this is how I met Anthony and when I work with him in the community, he also serves as the chairman of the City of Tampa Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Council. He's a first-generation American. Anthony was born in Chicago to Cuban-born parents. Growing up, Anthony found inspiration in their story of sacrifice. Today, that inspiration has been transformed into passion of giving back to underprivileged Hispanic youth. His passion and hard work have also gained him the trust of two mayors of the City of Tampa and the City of Tampa Hispanic Advisory Council. And this year, for the second time, he has been selected the chairman. Anthony holds a master's in business administration from the University of South Florida, and he serves as the USF Latino Advisory Scholarship Board, and the scholarship board. Last year, Anthony, inspired by his family, started a yearly scholarship in his grandmother's honor for Hispanic students who are at the first ones to attend college. Anthony serves as the board director of the Judeo-Christian Clinic. Through his involvement, he's able to help the Hispanic community of West Tampa by assisting them to receive medical care. Now, fun fact about Anthony. In 5 days, Anthony is running the Chicago Marathon. Woo-hoo! Welcome, Mr. Anthony Perez.
Good morning, yes.
Good morning.
Hard to believe that it's here in just 5 days. Can you hear me okay? Much better. Better?
That in just 5 days, I'm going to be running the Chicago Marathon. 26.2 miles. I know, I see you nodding your head. I still think sometimes, why would anybody run 26.2 miles? So I have to tell you, the first reason was that it was a unique opportunity that presented itself, one that I certainly couldn't say no to. The second reason was that when I shared that opportunity with some friends and family, they kind of laughed at me and told me that there was no way that it could be done in just 8 months. And the third was really for my family. You see, I have a 3-year-old daughter. and a 10-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old son. And so every day I live my life hoping to be an inspiration to them, and I knew that this would provide me that opportunity. And so with that, running this opportunity or running this marathon is something that I'm clearly excited about. You can imagine 5 days away, you're going to hear me talk about the marathon with you today. But before I do, I want to turn it back on you, and I'd like to ask you a question. Reflecting in your own life, what's the marathon in your life that you're currently moving forward towards? Maybe that dream, that ambition, that goal, that desire that you've been thinking about, taking steps towards. It's a pretty big audience, so I'm sure there's several of you who can't think of anything. So let me give you some examples. Perhaps you're a freshman here at HCC and you're working diligently to get your AA. That's a marathon that you're working towards. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. Perhaps you're a sophomore about to get your AA and you're thinking about where to go next, because continuing your education is important. That's a marathon. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. Perhaps it's writing a book, starting a business, or maybe for some of you it's a lifestyle change, getting rid of some old habits, waking up a little bit earlier than you normally do so you can get more out of your day, kicking some bad habits to the curb, eating a little better, going to the gym a little more, possibly. Whatever it is, guys, I can tell you this, that we all have them. Those dreams, those ambitions, those goals, we all have them. We call them marathons. So speaking of the marathon, let me tell you how this marathon came to be. So I'm picking my daughter up after school one day from a program called Girls on the Run. And I'm standing there talking to one of the coaches, and the coach looks at me and she says, "Hey, I noticed on social media, Facebook, that you recently did a run." I was like, first of all, I was very excited that someone saw something that I did on Facebook or social media. I'm dating myself, I know. And so I said, yeah, I did. And she started to just shower me with compliments. Keep in mind, the run that she's talking about was nothing more than a 10K, which is 6.2 miles. Nothing like a marathon. Of course, I didn't tell her that. I let her continue to flood me with compliments. She was telling me how great of an accomplishment it was and how proud I must be. And honestly, at this point, I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of nice that someone noticed this run that I did. And so, rather than kind of stopping her, I let her continue to share, flood me with these compliments. And then all of a sudden, the conversation took a turn. And she says, "You would be perfect." Oh yeah, perfect for what? I said. She goes, "How would you like to be the face of Girls on the Run, City of Tampa, at the Chicago Marathon?" Yeah, that's the same look I had on my face. Literally, so my mind starts thinking, I'm like, oh my God, Anthony, what have you gotten yourself into? There's no way possible. I don't have the time, the commitment. My wife's going to kill me. I'm never posting anything on social media ever again. That's the first thing I thought to myself. And so as I'm getting ready to tell her thanks, but no thanks, I look at my 10-year-old daughter, and she's looking at me with that face. Parents in the audience, you know the face when your kids want like a friend to sleep over or something. And she's looking at me, and I knew right then and there was no way possible I could say no. And so I politely accepted the invite and said I would be honored, thrilled as a matter of fact, to run the Chicago Marathon. And so we went home, we drove home that day. That was the greatest 20-minute car ride of my life. My daughter was so proud of me. She's texting her friends. They're planning a bake sale. She's finding these apps. "Look, Daddy, I found this couch to marathon plan for you." And so I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty confident. And we walk into the house. My daughter runs inside, and we had some friends of the family over that night. And she tells everybody, "Guys, you're not going to believe what happened. Daddy was asked if he would run the Chicago Marathon for Girls on the Run." And our family that was over that night, they looked at me and they're like, "Anthony, tell us you did not accept to run a Chicago Marathon." And I looked at them, I was kind of like, well, yeah, I did. And they started laughing at me. They literally started laughing. They're like, "You realize it's February, right? The Chicago Marathon is on October 13th. That leaves you just a few months. There's no way you'll do it." Well, see, to know how I responded to that, you have to know who I am and where I come from. You see, I was born in the city of Chicago. I'm a first-generation American. My parents were born in Cuba. And you see, the kind of family that I come from, they had a dairy farm in Cuba. Life was pretty good in Cuba until one day when they were teenagers, they had to leave their country because men with rifles came onto the farm and said, "This is no longer your farm, it's our farm." And just like that, they were presented with an opportunity to either stay and work for the government's farm now, or they could leave. You see, I come from the kind of family that had the courage to do the right thing and leave. Those travels took them to Spain, where my mother tells me they often ate ketchup and crackers as meals. From Spain, they went to the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago with nothing more than hopes, dreams, and enough money to buy a car jack. They used that car jack to fix flat tires. See, now from the outside looking in, you may be thinking to yourself, wow, what an awful situation, this poor family. But when I talked with my grandparents and my parents, that's not what they say. They say, don't feel bad for us. We didn't feel bad for ourselves. As a matter of fact, those were the most inspirational times, the most joyous times of our life. We were in the United States of America. This was a country we knew that rewarded hard work. It rewarded integrity. It rewarded doing right to others. They knew that this was a country that if you didn't like your circumstances, you could change them. You could go back to school. You could change them. You could get another degree and change them. You can change your career. You could change your circumstances. This was a country that nothing was going to hold you back. Let me fast forward my family's story of fixing flat tires 30 years for you. We no longer fix flat tires. We have 11 distribution centers, and we have hundreds of employees who rely on us and our customers for paychecks. It truly is an American dream, one that took a lot of hard work. I want to share with you a story that I shared today more than I've ever shared. When I was 9 years old, if you can imagine 9-year-old Anthony, my uncle, after work one day, took a different route home. And I remember saying to him, "Tío, where are we going? ¿A dónde vamos?" And he said to me, "Te quiero enseñar algo. I want to show you something." And we ended up downtown Chicago, in the middle of the high-rise buildings and the busy intersections. And I remember asking him again, I said, "Tío, what are we doing?" We were parked on the side of the street. And he said to me, "Tony, I want you to look around. I want you to look around at all the beautiful people," he called them that day. And he said, "Now look at me." And when I turned to my uncle, you have to understand, you see, my uncle to 9-year-old Anthony was larger than life. He was that Theo, that father that meant everything to you. And he had a tear in his eye. And he said, "Do you know why I'm covered in oil? Why I have oil underneath my fingernails, oil on my face? So that you don't have to. So that you could go to school, so that you can be like them." You see, my uncle passed away a few years ago from an unexpected heart attack at the age of 50. And I don't know that he'll ever know the impact that he had on 9-year-old Anthony. See, that day my uncle was telling me that I was a champion, that there was nothing that I couldn't do if I just stayed committed to doing it and was willing to put the work in. So you can imagine when my friends started laughing at me, telling me I couldn't do this, that's all it took. That's literally all it took. There was a fire fueled inside of me. I took the 2 people who believed in me in that room, my wife and my daughter, and we went to work immediately. That night, we printed up the couch to marathon. We taped it to the bathroom mirror. Like any person who starts a new goal, we ordered like 15 things off of Amazon. We literally had Amazon coming for days, you guys, with all the little gadgets that were going to help me in my marathon run. And we went to work immediately. The very next day we started. I started with 2 miles. The reward for doing 2 miles was 4 miles. The reward for doing 4 miles was 6 miles. By the end of week 1, I had done 6 miles. I have to tell you, I was feeling pretty good. As a matter of fact, I was feeling so good, I started thinking to myself, more people should do this. It's pretty easy. Why don't more people do this? And then reality set in. Because the reward for doing 6 miles quickly turned into 12 miles. And 12 miles quickly turned into 16 miles. And see, there's a lot that the training program doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you that once you get past a certain amount of miles, your training times double, triple, quadruple, and you're going to have to dedicate 3, 4, or 5 hours every other day to training. The training program doesn't tell you that the only way that you can dedicate that amount of time as a working adult with children is to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. And it doesn't tell you that at 4:30 in the morning, it's probably going to be raining. And that you should consider it a blessing to run in the rain. The program doesn't tell you that you're going to have to run on vacations. It doesn't tell you that you're going to get sick, possibly injured, and you're going to have to take days off. But the program continues, and you're going to have to work twice as hard to catch up. There's a lot of students in the audience, and so I know you can relate. I know you can relate. You got your acceptance letter to HCC. Perhaps for the sophomores, you got your acceptance letter to wherever you plan on going next, and that was a joyous time. That acceptance letter, you celebrated with your family, you knew what was coming, but there's a lot that acceptance letter didn't tell you. Right? It didn't tell you that the classes that you want may not be available. Even if they are available, the times that you want may not be available. And it certainly didn't tell you that parking was going to be impossible when you finally got onto the campus. I heard somebody back there. I think that was an amen. There's a lot that it didn't tell you. But yet you're sitting here because you've continued to stay resilient and committed. And for that I applaud you. And I'm sure that you're going to learn, if you haven't realized it already, I'd submit to you that you're going to learn as much about yourself outside of the classroom as you are inside of the classroom. Because it's a learning experience, this marathon that you're running. That's what it's been for me. So I'd like to leave you with 3 takeaways that I've learned from my running experience. And the first is this. The first is that you have to show up. You have to show up. They say that if you'll just show up to the starting line, you've already ran half the race. Imagine that. If you can just get out of your house and get in your car and get to campus, you're well on your way to running that marathon. I know if I can just get up at 4:30 in the morning, get my clothes on, and get out of the house before I realize what's actually happening, I know that something good is about to happen. You see, I want you to keep something in mind. Listen up. The mood that you were in when you made the commitment, it's not going to be the mood that you're in when it's time to keep the commitment. I'm going to say it again because I want to make sure you catch it. The mood that you were in when you made the commitment is not going to be the mood you're in when it's time to keep the commitment. I can promise you that. But you show up to the starting line no matter what. The second is this. Continue moving forward. So you showed up to the starting line. The race is a little harder than you thought. Keep moving forward. Continue to put one foot in front of the other. Slow down when you need to slow down. Take a break when you need to take a break. But keep moving forward. There's people in this audience right now, you guys, who have experienced obstacles or trials in this life that you nor I could ever imagine. As a matter of fact, if we were made aware of them, our hearts would break and we would probably think, wow, I don't know that they'll ever be able to keep moving forward. But if they could come up here on this stage right now, they would tell you that because they continue to show up, they continue to put one foot in front of the other, they are living a life full of purpose, one that they never dreamt imaginable. Keep moving forward. The third and last point I want to share with you is this. Have a champion mindset. Because you're going to need it. You see, a champion understands that the only way to enjoy the downhill is to work the uphill. There's no other way around it. The downhill is a very joyous time, but there's no way to do it unless you're willing to put the work in the uphill. And I can tell you that there's times in that uphill that it seems impossible. Impossible. There's times, guys, in this last 32 weeks of this training program that I was ready to throw in the towel. I was ready to give up. But I relied on those who are close to me, my wife, my daughter, to continue to inspire me to move forward. And that uphill, those challenges are going to come in many different ways, sometimes the least expected. For me recently, it came in the form of a text message that I'd like to read you. This was a few weeks ago, and it was a Saturday night. I had just got off the phone with my father. And I was telling my dad about the next day I was going to have to run 21 miles. And I was pouring my heart out to him about how difficult this is. And when we hung up that night, he sent me this message. It reads, Anthony, every study shows that running the way that you're running is not healthy. You are overdoing it. You have nothing to prove to anyone. Please give up. My heart beats faster and faster every time I know you're doing this. That night after I read this, and to my father's credit, I know that this came from a place of love and concern. And since then, he has followed up with many encouraging messages. But that night, this was devastating to me, guys. I must have texted 15 different things and deleted them all because they just were not appropriate to send to my father. I finally settled on, Papi, I love you. Thank you for sharing your concern. And you see, what I did with that is I allowed it to fuel me. And the very next day, and days after that, I allowed it to fuel me, and I continued to show up to the starting line. I continue to put one foot in front of the other. I continue to have a champion mindset. And today I would like to celebrate this with you, that in 5 days, I'm going to be running the Chicago Marathon. Can I ask you guys for a round of applause? Can I? Thank you. Thank you, guys. I'm going to take that applause with me because I know I'm going to have a moment at that marathon where it gets really hard. And I'm going to take that applause with me. And now I want to ask you if we'll continue that applause for those of you who are currently running your marathon, those of you who are ready to start running your marathon. Let's put our hands together because they're the ones that we really should be encouraging, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you today.